And so in the most self-sacrificial act in history, we also find the most powerful redemptive act in history. And this is crucial. This moment, Jesus dying on the cross, this is the plainest vision you will ever have of what God is really like. So, I'm excited to be talking about one thing today because last week I took the rare opportunity of not having to preach or host a service to go and spend some time with the 10 and 11-year-olds in Summit, and they grilled me. My goodness, I don't know why it was billed as a Q&A, and in the space of 30 minutes we went from how old are you, why is your accent strange, how long have you lived in Guildford, sort of, the basic stuff. We got to predestination, we got to sin and punishment, we got to why there are no dinosaurs in the Bible. It was a lot, I'll be honest. So well done to the parents of the 10 and 11-year-olds who are clearly fielding a lot of questions every day. I hope I helped somewhat. So today we're talking about one thing. It is, of course, Palm Sunday. And so today I want to look at the triumphal entry right through to Good Friday. That's where we're going today. And I'm going to begin by telling you a story, I think it's an Indian proverb, about an old man who lived on the banks of the Ganges River. And every day he began his morning by meditating under a tree by the river. And one morning he opened his eyes once he had finished his meditations, and he saw a scorpion floating down the river helplessly towards him. And so he scrambled out onto a branch that was overhanging the river, and he reached down to try and help the scorpion. And do you know what happened as soon as his hand got close enough? The scorpion stung him. And so he withdrew his hand, shook it, and then almost immediately he put his hand back down again to try and reach the scorpion. And again, the scorpion stung him. This time his hand started bleeding, his hand began to swell. And there was a passerby observing all of this. And at this moment he said, "Hey, you stupid old man, what are you doing? Don't you know you could die trying to save that vile scorpion?" And the old man turned round and calmly looked at his passerby, and he says, "My friend, just because it is the scorpion's nature to sting does not change that it is my nature to save." And this, I think, is a beautiful illustration of what you've hopefully picked up so far in the God story. Sorry, I just lost concentration. My son just walked in sunglasses. Oh, give me a minute. He wears them everywhere at the minute. Anyway, well, I sort of ruined the moment. We are 3 months into the God story. We've covered thousands of years of history in the past 3 months. Sometimes we've done centuries in a single sentence. And yet today, time slows right down and we begin to move in real time through Holy Week. Such an important 7 days that in the Gospels, they represent over a third of the material of each of the Gospels. That's a significant portion of the narrative. So key is this moment. And as we head into Holy Week, we want to remember that so far in the biblical narrative, in the God story, we've seen two things to be true. The one thing, firstly, is that humans, we, the creatures, are always making bad decisions, giving into temptation, hurting one another, injuring one another, and often basically just making a big old mess of things. And the second thing that hopefully you've picked up, hopefully we've done a good job of teasing this out, is that God is always working to restore relationship with us, to reconcile us to himself, to offer us second chance after second chance. And these two great narrative threads of the Bible, human rebellion and God's mercy, come to a head on Holy Week. So next week, of course, is Easter Sunday, and we will rightly celebrate the greatest day in the year for us as Christians. We will celebrate Jesus as the powerful, resurrected one, the firstborn from among the dead, the hope of new life. But it would be remiss of us to go from just celebrating Palm Sunday today to celebrating Easter Sunday next week. We must journey through Holy Week and the horrors that lie in the events that unfold. So we're going to dive in. I want to begin by looking at the triumphal entry, Jesus begins this final week of his life by making his way into Jerusalem. It's the first Sunday of Passover. Thousands of pilgrims have returned to Jerusalem to celebrate the great feast. Now, how do the crowds know to turn out and welcome Jesus? Well, by this point, Jesus' fame had started to spread. And so just previously, a couple days prior to this, Lazarus has been raised from the dead. And so that presumably was one of the stories that was spreading like wildfire. But interestingly, up until this point, particularly if you read the Gospel of Mark, Jesus has been quite shy about his true identity. Have you ever noticed this? When he heals someone or he casts out a demon, particularly in Mark, what does he say? He says, don't tell anybody, keep it quiet. I think the reason being that he didn't want things to get carried away. He knew the timing that he had in mind, and he knew that people would misunderstand what he was really about. And yet this moment, just prior to this in Mark, is when things begin to change. And if you like, Jesus goes sort of Facebook official with his Messiah status. And so what he does now is he begins to do things that are very provocative to the Israelite prophetic consciousness and to the messianic hope that they, of course, had. If you read the Old Testament, it's filled with prophecies about a coming king, a coming Messiah who would set the people free and rescue them. So let's read. Jesus, he asks his disciples to go and find him a donkey. The way that he knows where the donkey will be is supernatural. And then we pick up, this is in Mark 11. And they brought the donkey to Jesus and threw their cloaks on it. And he sat on it. And many spread their cloaks on the road, and others spread leafy branches that they had cut from the fields. And those who went before and those who followed were shouting, Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the coming kingdom of our father David. Hosanna in the highest. This is provocative, as I said, to both the Israelite prophetic consciousness, and it's subversive to Roman imperial rule, which they, of course, are living under. So in one act, Jesus is fulfilling prophecy, and he's beginning to reframe what power looks like. The people cheer. The Pharisees are, of course, raging about all of this. Jesus was being welcomed in this moment as the expected military, political Messiah, this figure that is going to come and set them free from Roman rule. So Hosanna actually means save us now. It has a political implications. And this is why they thought Jesus had come. So they're celebrating actually for entirely the wrong reasons. And the first sign that they've got this wrong is that Jesus is riding what? A donkey. What would a king coming to defeat the Romans be riding? A big old stallion, I'm guessing. He'd be armored, armed, probably have soldiers with him. Jesus rides on a donkey, probably with, both legs over one side of it due to what he was wearing. Just in the most humble mode of transport you can imagine. This is the first great sign on Palm Sunday that Jesus is doing something different. So imagine the crowd's disappointment the following day when Jesus, rather than attacking the Roman rulers, what does he attack the next day? The temple, right? He goes in and he makes a big fuss in the temple. He begins to attack the way they are running things. And it's highly likely that some of the people on this Sunday shouting, Hosanna, blessed is he, save us, a few days later were the same people shouting, crucify him. Human praise can quickly turn, right? If our expectations are not met. Are you aware of cancel culture? We love somebody 1 minute, and then the second they do something that we don't like, they get ostracized, isolated, and they can lose everything. Human praise is a very, very fickle thing indeed. And yet, Jesus, his resolve in this period is just so beautiful if you actually sort of think about it. Because whether the crowd cheers for him or jeer at him, it doesn't change what he is doing. You know that phrase, his face is set like flint towards Jerusalem? And it's so easy sometimes when we read these stories to forget that Jesus was one of us. He was fully human, right? And do you know that feeling you get perhaps before a job interview or an exam or before a medical appointment or procedure or before you know you're going to have a difficult does anybody know that feeling? You should. It's a very, very human feeling that we all get. That anxiety that you get before something that you're a bit worried about. Well, can you imagine Jesus? He doesn't just realize 2 days before all of this. He knows for a long time that all of this is coming, and yet he set his face like flint towards Jerusalem. He knows what he is setting in motion by riding into Jerusalem, and yet he does it anyway. Imagine knowing that you're going to be publicly humiliated, abandoned by your friends, isolated, misrepresented, beaten, and excruciatingly executed. Imagine what that would do to you, knowing for months and months that is coming. The triumphal entry and the confusion that the crowds feel and think about Jesus' mission, it makes me think of the times in my life when I've perhaps sought Jesus to fix something that I think is the problem, only for him to reveal to me either quickly or slowly that I've got it wrong. And what I find is, Lord, just fix this situation or this circumstance or this person, change them, or, just clear the way for me in this regard. And often, almost always what I find is as I sit in that request, what Jesus actually wants to do is change my heart. Has anybody ever noticed that? And so the crowd think he's coming to solve this short-term problem of Roman oppression. He's actually coming to deal not just with one outworking of human evil. He's coming to deal with the whole lot in one go: sin, death, and evil in its totality. You might cry Hosanna this week about a little situation, a financial thing, a relational thing, whatever it might be. But what I've found is that Jesus is basically always more interested in our rebirth than in short-term relief. He's always working at a deeper level than what we sometimes want him to. Because it's painful, right? It's painful to open your heart to his loving gaze, because it means changing. It means giving up things that we hold on to very tightly. We want relief, and he is always working towards our rebirth. So that's Palm Sunday, the triumphal entry. We're obviously going to have to skip over most of Holy Week. We don't have time to dwell on each day. I hope this week you will take the time, perhaps with Lectio or a devotional aid of some kind, to really journey through Holy Week. It's such a beautiful time for us as Christians. But instead, for the rest of our time, I want to turn our attention to Good Friday. And as we turn to Good Friday, I want to share with you another Old Testament prophecy. And remember that Jesus was someone absolutely saturated in the Hebrew scriptures. He knew them inside out. And so he would have been well aware of all of these. They actually would have been the things that brought shape and vision to how he acted his mission out. And this is one of the suffering servant passages from Isaiah. And I'm sure that this was in Jesus' mind a lot in the weeks leading up to these events. You may want to close your eyes and let me just read these 3 verses. Isaiah 53. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And as one from whom men hide their faces, he was despised and we esteemed him not. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed. Jesus' moment has arrived. After the intimacy of the Last Supper with his disciples, Jesus spends an agonizing evening in the Garden of Gethsemane. Again, the symbolism here is rich. If you cast your mind back to when we looked at the fall near the start of this series, what happened is that Adam and Eve in a garden disobeyed God and so brought a curse upon all of creation. And here we find Jesus in another garden. Father, not my will, but yours be done, choosing obedience and thus setting in motion the liberation of all creation from that same curse. Jesus is betrayed by a kiss from his friend. He is arrested. He's passed between Pontius Pilate and Herod, both representing sort of Roman rule and Jewish rule. Neither of them can find any reason to condemn Jesus, of course, ramming home the point that Jesus is innocent in all of this. He has done nothing wrong. Pilate offers the angry crowd a choice between Jesus or Barabbas, a convicted criminal, and they choose Barabbas. Jesus is then taken by Roman soldiers to be beaten. He is flogged with a whip with bits of bone in it. He's lashed. He is mocked. He is spat upon. They create a crown of thorns and they ram it onto his head. The crowd begin to cry, "Crucify him." And even, "We have no king but Caesar." Jesus is marched to a hill outside the city, so weak from the beating at this point that he is unable to carry the cross, as was the custom for a criminal on their way to be crucified. The four Gospels don't give us much detail on the actual act of crucifixion for the simple reason that crucifixion was so notorious in the ancient world that every hearer of this would have understood what it involved. We then read how Jesus is laid on this cross. Spikes are driven through his ankles and his wrists, and he is lifted up, again fulfilling prophecy. Over the jeering crowd, a robber on either side of him is being crucified as well. And the cross was the most excruciating death imaginable. Yes, he was bleeding from the nails and the lashings and the crown, but you don't die by bleeding out on a cross. You die by slow asphyxiation as your muscles become exhausted from just the sheer effort of remaining up on the cross. To add to this, those crucified were almost always naked, to add to their public shame and humiliation. Often ravens would be picking at people before they were even fully dead. It is unbelievable how awful the death that Jesus endured was. The cross was the ultimate symbol of Roman power. Defy us, and this is what happens to you. And yet, even in the midst of this unimaginable torment and suffering, do you know what Jesus' response is? "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." It is our nature to sting, yes, and that's more apparent here than anywhere else, but it does not change that it is God's nature to save. Nowhere is humanity's cruelty more apparent than in this story, but it still doesn't change Jesus' resolve to bring about our liberation and our forgiveness. This is the moment where those two great biblical themes of our rebellion and God's mercy have their full effect, and it is the latter which will triumph. Ronald Rolheiser writes of the cross, "Jesus took away the sin of the world by taking in hatred and giving out love, by taking in anger and giving out graciousness, by taking in envy and giving back blessing, by taking in bitterness and giving out warmth, by taking in pettiness and giving back compassion, by taking in chaos and giving back peace, by taking in sin and giving back forgiveness." In doing all of this, Jesus defeated death itself. He literally put death to death on the cross, the ultimate symbol of human cruelty and human power. Jesus takes it and he claims it, and he turns it into the ultimate symbol of forgiveness and of mercy. The cross is the ultimate of all paradoxes. As Jesus hangs there on the cross, suffocating to death, we are exposed to the very worst of humanity, that thing that lies in each of our hearts. The sun refuses to shine in these dark hours as the King of creation himself is killed. Evil throws everything that it has at Jesus. But his willing sacrifice has the opposite effect. It actually empties evil of its power. And so in the most self-sacrificial act in history, we also find the most powerful redemptive act in history. And this is crucial. This moment, Jesus dying on the cross, this is the plainest vision you will ever have of what God is really like. Hans Urs von Balthasar, the Swiss theologian, says this: being disguised under the disfigurement of an ugly crucifixion and death, Christ upon the cross is paradoxically the clearest revelation of who God is. Throughout the God story, we've seen a creator who progressively reveals himself to his people to try and bring them back to a place of shalom, of wholeness, of life and of flourishing. And it's come to the point where he has not only taken on flesh to become one of us, he has now allowed himself to be lifted up, pierced and crushed on our behalf on a cross. There should no longer be any question of who God is and what he is like. On the cross, we see God is love. What are we to make of this? It makes me think that Jesus is utterly compelling. And it's the paradox of the cross that makes him so. Everything we think we know about how the world works is turned on its head on the cross of Jesus Christ. Jesus, who, by the way, is reality itself. On the cross, he reveals to us that there are deeper truths about the world than we are often aware of. We think that strength, victory, might looks like killing our enemies and being the victors, right? We think that getting ahead, climbing, that's the way to the top. Jesus teaches us, no, going to the bottom is the only way to the top. Whoever loves his life will lose it, right? Jesus becomes the embodiment of his own teaching on the cross. All of our metrics, we find out on the cross, are misaligned with the deeper truth of reality. Our ideas about justice and fairness even. In my house, the thing I hear the most is, it's not fair. And that's just Andrea. Just kidding, obviously. It's the children. Right? We have these things built into us. It's not fair. Like, that's not the way it should be. Well, do you want to know what the most unfair thing that has ever happened was? It is the innocent Lamb of God being crucified on the cross, the greatest act of injustice that has ever been perpetrated. Human history is long and checkered, and we are 2,000 years past the cross at this point. And it struck me, just like it seems like we have tried absolutely everything to find peace, to find contentment, to find happiness. We have messed about with all kinds of things. And without doing a full tour of history, even just think about recent decades, the things that mark our time out against all others, the sexual revolution being one of them, the digital age, right? The lives we live that are infiltrated by technology that, yes, makes a lot of things easier, but what cost is it having upon us? The rampant consumerism that marks our age against all of others. We've tried absolutely everything. And there is increasingly widespread agreement at the minute that postmodernism, secularism, the age that we live in, these are increasingly seen as failed and failing ventures. And our young people in particular are crying out for something more, something meaningful, because the generation coming up now are the first to have grown up really in our age, devoid of this greater redemptive arc that has underpinned society before. And they are showing us that they want it. They want meaning. We had a guy called David Kinnaman at Emmaus a couple of years ago. He runs the Barna Research Institute in the US. It's a Christian research institute. And recently he said, undeniably there is renewed interest in Jesus in our time. Some of you will have seen this week, the Bible Society here in the UK released its latest report. It's called The Quiet Revival. Some of the most pertinent stats from that. In 2018, 4% of men aged 18 to 24 were attending church monthly. This has now risen to 21%. That's a 5-fold increase. For the same age range of young women, it's gone from 3 to 12%. That's a 4-fold increase. 40% of 18 to 24-year-olds say that they pray monthly at the moment. We should be encouraged by these stats, but we should not be surprised, because Jesus has always been and will always be the most compelling person to have ever lived. Why is that? Well, there's at least 2 reasons. Firstly, because we all need forgiveness. Every single one of us needs forgiveness. And secondly, every single one of us lives with pain. Every single person that has ever lived has lived with pain. And even if you haven't had a tragedy happen to you, there is just pain built into living in this world. Because our world is broken by sin, we live in a world filled with pain. Sin and pain go together. They're 2 sides of the same coin. I wonder what kind of pain you're living with today. It may be physical pain. Maybe relational pain, maybe emotional, mental, maybe financial, social, spiritual pain. Maybe you've been so hurt by a church or a church leader in the past. I don't know, but what I do know is that everybody is living with pain of some kind. And we of course try all kinds of ways to avoid it and escape it and medicate it. But in the end, pain is inevitable. None of us can opt out of it. And so sin, that thing that lies in each of our hearts that wants to choose the lesser way, the consequences of that sin, which is pain that we inflict on ourselves and others, all of this is the great leveler. And it's why the Christian message and the cross in particular is the most powerful, most enduring, most compelling message that you will find. We do not have a God who clicks his fingers and just makes it all go away. No, what we have in Jesus is a God who stands before us as one of us, looks us in the eyes and says, I know what you are feeling. I too have felt it. I see you in your disappointment, in your frustration. I see you in your failure. I see you in your pain. I know what it's like. But I have dealt with it one time, once and for all. Hebrews 4:15 says, we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. This is empathy. Xander fell off our deck the other day and landed on a big thing of thorns. And, being a busy dad, trying to clear the garden, you sort of go, oh, come on, get in the house, you're fine. That thing you do, right? Just, you're fine, you'll get over it, you'll cry for a few minutes. And Andrea kind of gave me the look of like, come on, be a little bit more compassionate. And then, of course, I go out to the garden a few minutes later to, being the conscientious man that I am. I'm going to remove that so my other children don't fall on it or whatever. As I pick it up, what happens? I get a thorn right in my thumb. And then, oh, fine, put it in the bin. A couple minutes later, I'm like, ow, that really hurts. And Xander's whole side was like cut up. This thing was like the same height as him. And so in Jesus, we have someone, there's a qualitative difference about understanding someone else's pain that gives you an authority and a love for them that you cannot have unless you too have suffered. Have you ever noticed that some of the most compassionate people, loving people you've met are sometimes the people who have suffered the most? Not sometimes, pretty much always, the people who have suffered the most. That's what we have in Jesus. I wonder if the band could join me. And so in this moment on Good Friday, the greatest witness of God's love of all time is Jesus Christ suffering on the cross. Behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. When we look at Christ on the cross, when we see his broken and bruised and bleeding body, when we look at his wounds, those are the wounds by which we are healed. There's an old Jonathan Helzer song that has this beautiful lyric in it. It's stuck with me for years. It said, I've heard about a man who's got holes in his hands. He can hide a mountain of sin in them. I wonder if you'd like to stand with me. Next Sunday, as I've said, we will, of course, celebrate the victorious resurrection of Jesus. But we must first, before we celebrate the stone that has been rolled away, we must first kneel at the cross of Good Friday, bringing our pain, bringing our sin to the feet of the one who took it away, who solved it one time, once and for all. And so very simply today, I'd love us to respond by kneeling before the cross of Jesus Christ. I wonder, Willem, the slide, the Rollheiser quote. This might just be a helpful way of personalizing it for you. But if you look at that quote, I wonder what it is you're holding today and what you need Jesus to give you in return. What's going on in your heart, in your mind? Hatred, anger, envy, bitterness, pettiness, chaos. Maybe your life is just chaos at the minute. Or maybe you have a profound sense of your own brokenness and sin today. Call to mind what it is for you. You may want to open your hands. Spirit, I just invite you into this space now to speak to your people as we dwell on this moment, this picture of Jesus on the cross. Come and speak to us, Spirit.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
And so whether it's one of those feelings, whether it's the pain of something that's happening to you or has happened to you, or sense of your own brokenness, Jesus today wants to give you back love, graciousness, blessing, warmth, compassion, peace, and ultimately forgiveness. To be a people of the resurrection, we must first be a people of Good Friday. We're going to sing now, we're going to sing Son of Suffering, a song that captures so much of this so beautifully. And as we do that, I'd love to invite you. You may want to just step out into an aisle if there's not space to kneel at your seat. There's plenty of room at the front. This isn't so much a prayer ministry moment, although we'd love to pray for you afterwards if you would like that. This is simply a moment symbolizing your surrender to Jesus. Jesus on the cross. We worship you, the Lamb of God. We worship you, Jesus. We kneel before you. Behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. And so the team are going to sing this. You may want to join in and sing, but if you want to just pray, if you want to bring everything that you need to bring to Jesus now, do that. And ask him for love, for forgiveness, for compassion, for warmth, for whatever it is you need today. And by his Spirit, he will give that to you.